The bandits thought they'd found an easy mark, just another small-town doctor living alone at the edge of Pine Grove. They didn't know they were about to wake a sleeping giant. Sometimes the deadliest predators wear the gentlest masks. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dr. James Chen's fingers moved with practiced precision as he stitched up little Tommy Parker's knee. The 8-year-old boy had taken a nasty spill off his bike, but he wasn't crying anymore, not since Dr. Chen had started telling him about the time he accidentally stitched up his own medical school textbook while practicing sutures. "And that's why," James said, tying off the last stitch, "I had to explain to my professor why page 394 was sewn to page 395. He winked at Tommy, whose giggle was interrupted by his mother's gentle hand on his shoulder. "What do we say to Dr. Chen?" Sarah Parker prompted, though her eyes were already full of gratitude. This wasn't the first time the doctor had stayed late to handle an emergency. "Thank you," Tommy chirped, carefully testing his newly bandaged knee. James ruffled the boy's hair. "Just remember our deal. No more trying to jump the Andersons' fence on your bike, at least not until you're a little taller." After seeing them out, James stood in the doorway of his modest clinic, watching the last rays of sun paint Pine Grove's main street in shades of amber and gold. The October air carried hints of wood smoke and approaching winter. 5 years he'd been here now, building a life so different from his past that sometimes it felt like a dream. His clinic occupied what had once been a small house, its white clapboard exterior recently repainted by volunteers from the town. The waiting room had been a living room, his examination rooms converted into bedrooms. It wasn't state-of-the-art, but it served the community's needs. More importantly, it was his. James locked up, double-checking each window, old habits die hard, before walking the 3 blocks to his house. Pine Grove, population 2,347, wasn't the kind of place where people typically worried about security. But James Chen wasn't typical, though he'd spent 5 years carefully crafting the appearance of it. His house sat at the edge of town, backing up to the dense forest that surrounded Pine Grove on 3 sides. From the outside, it looked like any other modest rural home, 2 stories of faded blue paint and practical architecture. Inside was different, not obviously so. You'd have to know what to look for to spot the reinforced door frames, the subtle security sensors, the specially treated windows. The basement. Well, the basement was another matter entirely. James went through his evening routine with mechanical precision. Dinner, grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, brown rice. His body was a machine he kept carefully maintained. A glass of wine while reading the latest medical journals. A hot shower to ease the day's tension from his shoulders. Normal, peaceful. Everything he'd wanted when he'd walked away from his old life. He was toweling off his hair when he heard it, the faintest scrap of metal on metal from downstairs. Someone picked his lock. Amateur hour. The real pros would have noticed the secondary security system. James felt his pulse steady, his breathing slow, the calm that came before action, muscle memory from a life he'd thought he'd left behind. The doctor disappeared. In his place stood a man who had spent 15 years as one of the deadliest undercover operatives in Asia. The kind of agent other agents whispered about. The ghost they sent in when everything had gone wrong, and the only solution was permanent. Silence. He moved silently to his bedroom closet, pressed his palm against a seemingly solid back panel. It slid aside, revealing an array of equipment he'd prayed he'd never need to use again. Muscle memory took over as he selected what he needed, body moving with the fluid grace of a predator. Within 30 seconds, James Chen, the gentle, small-town doctor, had transformed into someone else entirely. Someone who wore shadows like a second skin. Someone who had once been known in certain circles only as the quiet man. He could hear Them now, three distinct sets of footsteps trying to be stealthy and failing. Local talent, probably. The kind of opportunistic criminals who'd see a doctor living alone at the edge of town as an easy mark. They'd be expecting prescription drugs, maybe some cash. What they'd find instead, James allowed himself a small, grim smile as he moved into position. He'd spent 5 years building this life, caring for these people, becoming part of this community. He'd walked away from violence, from death, from the shadows. But sometimes the shadows found you anyway. And if these men threatened the peace he'd built here in Pine Grove, well, they were about to learn why some of Asia's most hardened criminals still woke in cold sweats, remembering the whispered legend of the quiet man. Through the darkness, James watched the first intruder's shadow creep across his living room floor. His hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his chosen implement. 5 years of peace were about to be shattered, but he'd be damned if he'd let anyone threaten his home. Not again, never again. The first bandit stepped into view, and James Chen, doctor, healer, protector of Pine Grove, prepared to remind the world why he'd once been considered one of the deadliest ghosts in Asia, sometimes the most dangerous. Predators were the ones hiding in plain sight, and tonight the predator was coming out to play. James moved through his darkened house like a ghost, each step calculated. The security system's silent alert had already sent an encrypted signal to a server that hadn't been accessed in 5 years. Old protocols die hard. If things went badly tonight, certain people would know where to look for bodies. Through the darkness, he studied his uninvited guests. 3 men, all armed with cheap handguns, the kind of weapons that suggested more bravado than experience. Their movements were sloppy, uncoordinated. Not professionals, local thugs who'd probably heard rumors about the doctor's well-stocked pharmacy. The tallest one, presumably their leader, wore a black ski mask that didn't quite cover the snake. Tattoo creeping up his neck, James had seen him before, loitering outside the pharmacy 2 towns over. The other 2 were unknowns, but their body language screamed amateur hour. 5 years ago, these men would already be dead. The quiet man didn't leave witnesses, but Dr. James Chen had taken an oath to heal, not harm. He'd have to find a middle ground between his past and present. His mind flashed back to his last mission, the one that had made him walk away. Shanghai, 2019. The warehouse district. Blood on his hands that no amount of scrubbing could remove. The moment he realized he couldn't do it anymore, couldn't be that person, the memories threatened to overwhelm him, but James pushed them back. Focus on the now. 3 threats. Civilian. Population nearby. Minimize collateral damage. Protect the clinic's supplies. Leave no evidence of capabilities. The leader gestured toward the stairs with his gun. Check upstairs. Doc's probably sleeping. Don't shoot unless you have to. Gunshots will wake the whole damn town. James almost smiled. They thought he was upstairs, vulnerable in his bed. In their minds, they were the predators. They had no idea they were already being hunted. He thought about Tommy Parker's knee, stitched up just hours ago. About Sarah Parker's grateful eyes, about all the people in Pine Grove who trusted him with their lives, their health, their children. This wasn't just about protecting himself anymore. This was about protecting them. The basement held more than just his old equipment. Special Forces medical training, combined with years of field experience, had taught him how to incapacitate without killing. The human body was a machine, and he knew exactly how to make it malfunction temporarily. From his vantage point in the shadows, James watched the shortest intruder approach his medical cabinet. The man's hands shook as he picked the lock. An addict then, not just after money. That complicated things. Addicts were unpredictable, desperate. The floorboard 3 steps from the cabinet, the one that always creaked no matter how many times he'd tried to fix it, would be their undoing. 1 step, 2 steps. The board creaked. All 3 men froze. James Chen, the gentle doctor, took a deep breath. The quiet man exhaled, and the night erupted into carefully orchestrated chaos. The shortest intruder never saw the strike coming. One moment he was reaching for the medical cabinet, the next he was unconscious, collapsed without a sound. James caught him before he hit the floor. No noise, no evidence. "Joey." The leader's harsh whisper cut through the darkness. "What's taking so long?" James eased the unconscious man to the ground, mentally calculating. 2 remaining threats. The leader was moving toward the cabinet while the third man was halfway up the stairs. Divide and conquer. "I swear to God, Joey, if you're sampling." "The merchandise." Snake Tattoo rounded the corner, gun leading. James moved like a liquid shadow. 15 years of work had taught him the human body's weaknesses. A precise strike to the vagus nerve, pressure on the carotid artery. Snake Tattoo's eyes widened in recognition, not of James, but of his own mortality, before they rolled back. In his head, 2 down. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Upstairs, floorboards creaked as the third man searched for a doctor who wasn't there. James could hear him moving room to room, growing more nervous with each empty space. Fear made people sloppy. Sloppy people made mistakes. As if on cue, a phone buzzed. The man upstairs answered in a harsh whisper. "Cal, are you there?" "What's happening?" Silence answered him. "Cal? Joey? This ain't funny, man." James retrieved a small case from behind a false panel. Inside lay auto-injectors filled with a specially formulated sedative, something he'd developed during his operative days. Fast-acting, metabolized quickly, left no trace. For emergencies only, he'd told himself when stocking them here. Like tonight, the man upstairs was retreating now, guns swinging wildly at shadows. His breathing had become erratic, the beginning stages of panic. James had seen it countless times. Fear was a weapon more effective than any blade or bullet. "Cal, I'm out, man. This ain't worth it." James watched from the darkness as the man reached the bottom of the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. A floorboard creaked behind him. The man whirled, gun raised, finger tightening on the trigger. James was already moving. The gun discharged with a deafening crack, bullet embedding harmlessly in the ceiling. Before the echo faded, James had disarmed, him with a precise strike to the wrist, followed by an injection to the neck. The man's eyes widened in shock, then glazed over as the sedative took effect. 3 down, clean, efficient, just like old times, but the gunshot changed everything. In a town this small, someone would have heard. Questions would be asked. His carefully constructed life could unravel with a single police report. James moved quickly, professionally. The 3 men were zip-tied and arranged to tell a story, one that wouldn't raise too many questions. He placed a few prescription bottles from his own legitimate supply near them, crafting a scene of amateur burglars who got spooked and knocked each other out in the dark. His phone was already ringing. Ellen Mitchell, the town's sheriff, and his occasional dinner companion. They'd been dancing around something more for months now. "James, you okay? Mrs. Henderson heard a shot from your direction." He pitched his voice to convey controlled shock. "Ellen, yes, I think someone tried to break in. I was in the basement, doing inventory, heard noises, then a shot. I've got 3 unconscious men in my living room. Stay put. I'm 3 minutes out." James used those 3 minutes wisely. Every trace of the quiet man vanished back behind false panels and hidden compartments. By the time emergency lights painted his walls in red and blue, he was every inch the disturbed but composed town doctor. But as he watched Ellen lead her deputies into his house, James felt something stir in his chest. The calm efficiency of violence, the familiar dance of deception, like riding a bike, some skills you never forgot. The carefully constructed peace of the last 5 years had been shattered by a single gunshot, and deep down, in a place he didn't like to acknowledge, part of him had missed this. The adrenaline, the chess game of predator and prey. As he gave his statement to Ellen, crafting the perfect blend of truth and misdirection, James realized his past hadn't just caught up with him, it had kicked down his front door. And somehow, he knew this was only the beginning. 3 amateur burglars weren't a coincidence. They were a warning shot. Someone, somewhere had found him. And they were just getting started. Ellen's hand on his arm pulled him back to the present. "Are you sure you're okay staying here tonight? You could come back to my place." James forced a smile. "I'll be fine, really. They probably just heard about a small-town doctor with a pharmacy and thought I'd be an easy target." But as he watched his would-be burglars being loaded into patrol cars, James's mind was already racing. He needed to check his old dead drops, activate dormant contacts. Someone had found Dr. James Chen. And if they'd found him, the quiet man would need to wake up completely, before whoever sent these amateurs sent professionals next. The next few hours moved like a carefully choreographed dance. Deputies photographed the scene. Ellen took statements. 3 would-be burglars were booked into the county jail, still groggy from what everyone assumed was fear and adrenaline. James played his role perfectly. The shaken but composed doctor, more concerned about his patient's medical records than his own safety. He deflected Ellen's worried glances with practiced ease, knowing each look carried questions he couldn't answer. "The pharmacy's untouched," he assured her, leading a final walkthrough. "They never made it past the living room." Ellen's eyes narrowed, years of law enforcement instinct warring with what she thought she knew about him. "Lucky you were in the basement, lucky," James agreed, letting just enough tremor enter his voice. The art of deception lay in the details. After the last deputy left, Ellen lingered. She'd taken off her duty belt, transforming from Sheriff Mitchell to just Ellen, the woman he'd shared coffee with every Thursday morning for the past 3 years. "James." She stepped closer, concern etched in the lines around her eyes. "Something doesn't add up here. 3 men all unconscious, no signs of a struggle. And that bullet hole in the ceiling, trajectories all wrong for someone shooting up the stairs." For a moment, James considered telling her everything. Ellen was sharp, capable, and discreet. In another life, she might have made an excellent operative, but the truth would put her in danger, and he'd sworn after Shanghai, after everything, no more collateral damage. "Adrenaline makes memories unreliable," he said softly, using the same tone he used with anxious patients. "They probably panicked in the dark, knocked each other down. I was lucky." "Lucky," she repeated, echoing his earlier response. Her hand found his arm, warm through his shirt sleeve. "At least let me post a deputy outside tonight." "I'll be fine, Ellen, really." He covered her hand with his, allowing himself this small moment of genuine connection. "Go home. Get some rest. I've got paperwork to finish anyway." After she left, James waited exactly 17 minutes before moving. Old protocols kicked in automatically. Sweep for surveillance, check exit routes, activate countermeasures. The basement called to him like a siren song. Behind its reinforced door lay more than just medical supplies and storage. The far wall, behind a shelf of innocuous cleaning supplies, concealed his real insurance policy. The false panel slid aside silently, revealing a space that would have shocked anyone who knew Dr. James Chen, the gentle small-town physician. Weapons, documents, burner phones, everything a ghost might need to disappear again. His fingers traced the spine of a particular folder, one he hadn't opened in 5 years. Inside lay the answers to questions he'd hoped never to face again. Shanghai, the mission that broke him, the reason he'd walked away. The folder's contents told a story few people knew. A deep cover operation gone wrong, a hospital full of innocents, a choice between completing the mission and saving lives. He'd chosen the lives, broken protocol, exposed himself, burned everything to get those people out. His handlers had understood, even supported his decision, but the target had escaped. And now, 5 years later, 3 amateur burglars had kicked down his door. James activated one of the burner phones, a specific model, virtually untraceable. The number he dialed hadn't been used in half a decade, but he knew it would still work. Some contingencies never expired. 2 rings, a click. "The weather in Taipei is lovely this time of year," a familiar voice said in Mandarin. "I prefer Shanghai." "In autumn," James replied, completing the authentication. A pause. "We thought you were dead." That was the idea. James switched to English. "I need to know if he's active again." Another pause, longer this time. "You're not cleared for that information anymore. 3 men just tried to breach my location. Amateurs," the voice dismissed. "Local talent. Nothing connects to Shanghai." "You sound very sure about that." "Because I am." The voice softened slightly. "Ghost, let it go. You're out. Enjoy your retirement. Doctor suits you better than operative anyway." The line went dead. James stared at the phone, mind racing. His old handler, now apparently promoted given his access level, had been too quick to dismiss the threat, too certain, which meant either he was telling the truth or he was under orders to keep James in the dark. Either way, he couldn't trust official channels anymore. Time to activate unofficial ones. He pulled another phone from the cache, this one requiring fingerprint and retinal scan to unlock. Inside was a single contact, no name, just a string of numbers that would connect him to someone even his handlers didn't know about. His thumb hovered over the call button. Making this call would change everything. Once certain people knew he was alive, there would be no going back to simple small-town life. But if he was right, if Shanghai had finally caught up with him, then staying quiet could put everyone in Pine Grove at risk. Ellen, Tommy Parker, and his mother. All the people who trusted Dr. James Chen with their lives. The quiet man had walked away to protect innocence. Maybe it was time for him to wake up fully, to do the same thing. James pressed the call. 1 ring. 2. 3. "I was wondering when you'd surface." A woman's voice, smooth as aged whiskey. "Saw the alert ping from your security system." "Maya." He allowed himself a small smile. "Still monitoring my fail-safes after all these years?" Someone had to watch. "You're back while you played doctor." A pause. "Shanghai's ghost is walking again." James felt his blood run cold. "Confirmed? 3 operations in the past month. His signature. Precision strikes, no witnesses, maximum psychological impact before the kill. Targets? Former assets. People who were there that night. He's working his way through the list." The list. Everyone who had helped him save those civilians. Everyone who had chosen mercy over mission. "I'm not the end game," James realized. "I'm the finale." "He's sending a message and testing your defenses," Maya agreed. "Those amateurs tonight, probably local muscle, hired through cutouts. He's probing, seeing if retirement has made you soft." James thought of the unconscious men, now sleeping off trauma in county lockup. "He has his answer." "Ghost," Maya's voice held a warning. "You walked away for a reason. Let us handle this." "Those people died because of my call, Maya. Their blood is on my hands. Those people died because a psychopath couldn't handle mission. Failure. You saved hundreds of innocents. And now he's killing everyone who helped me do it." James's voice hardened. "I won't hide while others pay for my choices." A long silence. Then, "I'll send you what we have. But Ghost, if you do this, there's no going back. That life you built, the doctor, the town, that you'll have to burn it all." James looked around his living room. Pictures on the walls, community events, hospital fundraisers, moments of a life. Carefully crafted. A life he'd grown to love, a life built on the foundation of choices made in Shanghai. "Some debts have to be paid," he said finally. "No matter the cost. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. James stood in the darkness of His living room, feeling the weight of two worlds colliding. Dr. James Chen had saved lives tonight without taking any. The quiet man would have eliminated the threat permanently. Soon he would have to choose which man he truly was, and somewhere out there, a ghost from Shanghai was waiting to help him make that choice. The night stretched long before him, full of possibilities and threats. Tomorrow he will have to start preparing, setting contingencies, creating distance from the people he'd grown to care about. The quiet man was waking up, and this time there would be no walking away until Shanghai's ghost was laid to rest, one way or another. Dawn found James in his basement, surrounded by ghosts of his past. Files, weapons, and equipment lay meticulously arranged on the steel workbench. Tools he'd hoped never to use again. His clinic would open in 3 hours. Mrs. Henderson needed her blood pressure checked. The Miller twins had vaccinations scheduled. Life in Pine Grove continued, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. James's burner phone buzzed. Myers promised intel. The data painted a grim picture. 3 former assets eliminated in the past month. David Park, Seoul, found in his apartment, precision kill shot. Maria Santos, Manila, car accident on a clear day. John Chen, no relation. Vancouver, heart. Attack at age 42, all the people who'd helped him in Shanghai, all dead with their families left alive, forced to watch, to suffer. A signature he knew too well. The ghost of Shanghai sends his regards, read the note left at each scene. James studied the surveillance photos Maya had included. The targets before death, going about their normal lives, just like he had been. Their families after, hollow-eyed, haunted. The ghost's real victims. His hands moved automatically, muscle, memory taking over as he reassembled a modified Glock 19. The weight felt familiar, wrong. 5 years of healing, of saving lives, and now. The basement door creaked. James had the gun up and aimed before his conscious mind registered movement. Just me. Ellen's voice, followed by footsteps on the stairs. The Glock disappeared beneath medical supplies as Ellen reached the bottom step. She looked exhausted, still in yesterday's uniform. "Thought I'd check on you before shift change," she said, then stopped. Her eyes scanned the basement, catching details, the too clean organization, the faint smell of gun oil he hadn't quite masked. "Ellen," James began, but she held up a hand. "Don't." Her voice was tight. 3 men, all with military backgrounds, all knocked unconscious without a mark on them, precision takedowns. The gun shot, deliberately into the ceiling, controlled. And now this. She gestured at the basement. "You're not just a doctor." "Are you?" James considered his options. Lies would push her away, keep her safe. Truth would put her in danger, but it might also give her a fighting chance if things went wrong. "No," he said finally. "Not just a doctor." Ellen nodded slowly. "The way you move sometimes, how you always position yourself with sightlines to exit, the consulting work that took you to Asia before settling here." Her eyes met his. "What agency?" "It's better if you don't know." "Better for whom?" She stepped closer. "Because 3 thugs just tried to hit my town's only doctor. And something tells me they weren't just after prescription drugs." Ellen. James felt the familiar weight of life in the balance. Knowing more puts you in danger. "I'm the sheriff. Danger's part of the job." She laid her badge on the workbench. "But right now, I'm not asking law enforcement. I'm asking as someone who's shared coffee with you for 3 years. Someone who's watched you heal this town. Someone who—" She paused. "Someone who cares." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and threat. James thought of Shanghai, of burning his old life to save innocence, of the ghost methodically hunting down everyone who'd helped him make that choice. 5 years ago, he began slowly, I was involved in an operation that went wrong. Very wrong. I made a choice. Saved lives I was supposed to sacrifice. Burned everything to get civilians out of the crossfire. Ellen listened as he outlined the bare bones. The hospital full of innocents, the target using them as shields. His decision to break protocol. Her face remained neutral, professional, but her hands had clenched into fists. The target escaped, James continued. He's been busy lately. 3 people connected to that operation are dead. Their families were left alive to suffer. And now he's found you. Those men last night were just a probe, testing my defenses, seeing if retirement had made me soft. Ellen absorbed this, her tactical mind visibly processing implications. You're leaving, aren't you? I have to. When he comes, and he will come, I can't have Pine Grove caught in the crossfire. Like hell! Ellen's voice cracked like a whip. This is my town, my responsibility. You don't get to make that choice alone. Ellen, no. She stepped into his space, all pretense of professional distance gone. 5 years, James. 5 years of watching you heal people, build trust, become part of this community. You think you can just disappear, leave us unprotected, when this ghost of yours comes calling. I'm trying to protect you. By running? That's not protection, that's abandonment. Her eyes blazed. You think he won't come here anyway? Send more thugs to shake down the town's only doctor? Use us to draw you out? James felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. She was right. Running wouldn't save Pine Grove. It would only leave them vulnerable. The burner phone buzzed again. Maya's text was brief. 4th target eliminated. Hong Kong. He's accelerating. Ellen read the message over his shoulder. How long? A week. Maybe less. She nodded once, decision made. Then we have work to do. She picked up her badge. I've got deputies to train, security to upgrade. You've got patients to see. Ellen, you don't understand what he's capable of. No, you don't understand. She poked his chest. This isn't Shanghai. This isn't some operation where you carry the weight alone. This is Pine Grove. We take care of our own. James stared at her, seeing the steel beneath the small-town sheriff exterior. She'd die protecting this town, just like he'd burned his life protecting those civilians. If you stay, he said quietly, if you help me fight this, there's no going back. Your life, your career, already made that choice. She gestured at the basement around them. The moment I walked down those stairs. The burner phone buzzed one final time. Maya's message chilled him. Surveillance shows him boarding a flight, US bound. Ghost, he's coming. Ellen read it, then met his eyes. How do we stop him? James felt the last pieces of Dr. Chen falling away, the quiet man rising fully to the surface. But something was different this time. He wasn't alone. First, he said, we get the town ready, without causing panic. And then, the quiet man smiled, a predator's expression that had once terrified Asia's underworld. Then we remind him why some ghosts are better left unavenged. Dawn light filtered through the basement windows, painting shadows across walls that had hidden his secrets for 5 years. In 3 hours, he'd be Dr. Chen again, healing the people of Pine Grove. But now, finally, he had someone who knew both sides of him, someone willing to stand against the coming storm. The ghost of Shanghai was coming, and Pine Grove would be ready. The morning unfolded with practiced normalcy. James saw his patients, smiled at familiar faces and wrote prescriptions, but beneath each interaction lay new calculations, risk assessments, contingency plans. Ellen had already started moving pieces. Deputy training suddenly included advanced tactical scenarios. Security cameras appeared at strategic points around town, officially part of a modernization initiative. The local gun club saw increased enrollment, with Ellen herself teaching advanced self-defense classes. Between patients, James received Maya's updates. Ghost's flight landed in Los Angeles. Cash withdrawals at specific locations heading east. Burner phones activated in a pattern suggesting multiple teams he's building. A network, James told Ellen during their now daily briefing in his basement. Local assets, disposable crews, like the ones from the other night. How many? Based on the pattern, 3 teams, probably 4 men each. Professional this time, ex-military or worse. Ellen studied the map they'd created, marking likely approach. Routes to Pine Grove. Choke points here, here, and here. We can work with that. James watched her strategize, seeing the tactical mind beneath the sheriff's badge. She'd adapted to this new reality with surprising speed, maybe too easily. "There's something you haven't told me," he said quietly. Ellen's hands are still on the map. 2 tours in Afghanistan, force recon, before I decided small-town life suited me better. She met his eyes. "We all have past lives, James." The revelation shifted his perspective. Not just a sheriff adapting, a warrior returning to familiar ground. That's why you spotted the inconsistencies that night. That, and I've been watching you for 3 years. A ghost of a smile. You're good, but nobody's perfect. Little tells. The way you clear rooms without thinking, how you write with both hands equally well, combat surgeon training shows. The dynamic shifted, professional respect deepening into something more complex. Partners now, in more ways than one. James's burner phone buzzed. Maya's message was brief. "Package incoming. Old channels." Within an hour, a delivery truck dropped off medical supplies. Hidden beneath legitimate inventory lay everything they'd need. Cutting-edge security equipment, specialized ammunition, tactical gear designed for close-quarter combat. "Your friend Maya," Ellen said, examining a particularly elegant piece of technology. "She's not just some old colleague, is she? She was my handler before Shanghai." James paused. "And something more once. A lifetime ago." Ellen absorbed this, her expression unreadable. "Will she come? When will he make his move?" "No. She operates differently now. Information, support, but never direct engagement." They worked through the afternoon, converting Pine Grove into a fortress without looking like one. Security systems disguised as infrastructure upgrades, tactical positions masked as renovation projects. The town's natural bottlenecks are enhanced with subtle barriers. "We're assuming he'll come in force," Ellen mused. "What if he doesn't? What if he plays it subtle? Poison, maybe, or a sniper shot while you're seeing patients." James shook his head. Not his style, not anymore. Shanghai changed him too. Made it personal. He pulled up Maya's files on the recent killings. "See the pattern? Each death is more elaborate than the last. He wants his targets to know he's coming. I want them to feel what he felt that night." "Helpless," Ellen supplied. "Watching. Everything burn." "Exactly." James indicated the surveillance photos. He could have killed their families too, cleaner that way, but he left them alive, to remember, to suffer. Like the people in the hospital. Ellen's voice hardened. "The ones you saved instead of eliminating." "Everyone who helped me that night. They all had families, people they protected. He's making them pay for that choice." Ellen was quiet for a moment, processing. "How many others, besides the 4 he's already killed?" 3 more. "Thank you." James pulled up more files. "Maya's warning them, but they won't all survive." "No." The weight of it settled between them. 7 lives, 7 families, all because he'd chosen mercy over mission. "I don't regret it," James said quietly, "saving those people, but the cost." Ellen's hand found his, warm and calloused from weapons training. "Some choices mark us forever. Don't make them wrong." The burner phone buzzed again. Maya's update froze James's blood. 5th target down, Denver. Family executed too. He's changing patterns. Ghost, he's devolving. No more rules. Ellen read the message, her tactical mind already shifting plans. "How long?" "At this pace, 3 days, maybe 4. She nodded once. "Time to bring in my deputies, the ones I trust. Completely. They need to know what's coming." "Ellen." They're already involved. Better they face it prepared than blind. Her grip on his hand tightened. You're not alone in this anymore. Remember that. James looked at their joined hands, feeling worlds collide. The quiet man had always worked alone. Dr. Chen had built connections, community. Now, somehow, he had to be both. The ghost of Shanghai was coming, leaving broken families in his wake. But this time, his target wasn't just one man. This time, he'd have to face a whole town, and Pine Grove protected its own. The first test came sooner than expected. James was finishing his last appointment when Maya's alert hit his phone. Local police channels compromised. Ghost's team monitoring communications. Exercise communication blackout protocols. Across town, Ellen was briefing her most trusted deputies, Sarah Martinez and Mike O'Connor, when her secure line buzzed. James's message was brief. Go dark, now. Inside his clinic, James moved with controlled urgency, ushering Mrs. Peterson out while scanning the street through reinforced windows. 3 unfamiliar vehicles had appeared in the last hour. Tourist season is over. No coincidences. His burner phone vibrated. Facial recognition hit. Team 1 spotted in Aberdeen. 47 minutes out. Professional grade, ex-Spetsnaz. James activated his clinic's new security protocols. Bulletproof shutters disguised as weather protection slid into place. The pharmacy's vault is sealed automatically. To anyone watching, it would look like normal closing procedures. His phone buzzed again. Ellen. Package received. Executing Protocol 3. Protocol 3 meant Ellen and her deputies would evacuate key civilians, families with children, elderly residents, under the guise of a gas leak. The town's emergency response plan, quietly modified over the past week, would scatter potential hostages to secure locations. James moved to his basement, transforming from doctor to operative. The cash Maya had sent included everything he needed: tactical gear, communications equipment, specialized weapons. He dressed methodically, each piece a reminder of the life he'd left behind. The Ghost's first team would be scouts, professionals, tasked with confirming his presence and assessing defenses. They'd expect to find a small-town doctor, soft from years of civilian life. They'd find something else entirely. His earpiece crackled. Ellen's voice tight with controlled tension. 3 vehicles entering town, black SUV, 2 sedans, military. Precision driving? Plates? Clean, too clean. James checked his weapons. How's the evacuation? 60% complete. Martinez is leading the last group out through the mining tunnels. The old copper mines beneath Pine Grove had been their secret weapon. Evacuation routes unknown to any outsiders. Ellen's idea, force recon training showing its worth. Status on O'Connor. In position, surveillance net active. James moved to his observation post, a reinforced position with clear sightlines to the street. The first sedan passed his clinic. Slowly, windows tinted, but he caught glimpses of tactical gear. Professional, dangerous. Contact, Ellen's voice whispered. They're splitting up. Standard search pattern. Let them come, James replied. Everything in place? Affirmative. Town looks normal, quiet, just like they'd expect. The trap was set. Pine Grove appeared vulnerable, a sleepy town with its citizens mysteriously absent. The perfect target. The second sedan approached James's clinic. 2 men inside, plus the driver, the passenger's window lowered slightly. Reconnaissance. James's finger tightened imperceptibly on his trigger. 1 shot would start a war. Ghost. Maya's voice cut through. His earpiece. Satellite shows 2 more teams mobilizing. 30 minutes out. These aren't scouts. James felt his blood run cold. They're not here to observe. No. Pattern matches Shanghai. They're here to hurt you. Through them. The sedan's trunk popped open. A third man emerged, carrying something that made James's combat instincts scream. Ellen, he snapped. Those aren't weapons cases. They're carrying demolition gear. A pause, then confirmed. They're setting up at strategic points. James, they're going to level the town. The ghost's message was clear. Everything you built, everything you protected, it all burns. James made his decision. Protocol 0. James, no. Ellen's voice cracked. We planned for this. We can contain them. Not without casualties. He knows that. He's forcing my hand. James was already moving, muscle memory taking over. If I engage now, they'll focus. On me, give you time to get everyone out. And paint a target on your back. Better me than Pine Grove. He checked his equipment one final time. Get our people clear. I'll keep them busy. Ellen's silence spoke volumes. Finally, you're not doing this alone. Ellen, shut up and listen. Her voice hardened. O'Connor has an overwatch position. Martinez is blocking their exit routes. I'm 2 minutes from your position with tactical support. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. The sound of weapons being checked carried through the comm. You protected our town for 5 years. Now we protect you. James felt something shift in his chest. The quiet man had always worked alone, but maybe that was the problem. Incoming, Maya's voice cut in. Team 2 accelerating, 20 minutes out. James watched another demolition charge being placed. Once armed, they'd level half the town's main street. His clinic, the diner where he had coffee with Ellen, the park where he'd stitched up Tommy Parker's knee, his home. Ellen, he said quietly, if we do this, there's no going back. Pine Grove will never be the same. Pine Grove was never just buildings. James, her voice softened. It's people, community, family, and the family fights together. The sedan's trunk slammed shut. The demolition team moved towards their next target. The quiet man took a breath. Dr. Chen thought of his patients, safely evacuated, and James thought of Ellen, of Tommy Parker, of all the people who'd made this town home. Maya, he said, we're going hot. Inform all channels. Acknowledged, Ghost. Good hunting. James lined up his shot. One round would start a war. But this time, he wasn't fighting alone. On my mark, he breathed. The town held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The ghost of Shanghai had sent his first wave to burn Pine Grove to the ground. They were about to learn why some fires. Bite back. The first shot shattered the sedan's rear window, disabling the demolition equipment inside. Before the echo faded, chaos erupted. Contact, Ellen's voice cracked through the comm. Multiple hostiles, Main Street. James was already moving, years of training taking over. The Spetsnaz team reacted with professional precision, taking cover and returning fire. But they were fighting blind, expecting resistance from street level. They weren't prepared for Pine Grove's modifications. O'Connor's sniper fire pinned down 2 operatives behind their vehicle. Martinez's team had sealed the exit routes with carefully placed construction equipment. And Ellen, a controlled burst of gunfire from the diner's roof, sent another operative scrambling. Ellen's force recon training showed in every shot. Precise, calculated, effective. Team 2 accelerating, Maya reported. 15 minutes out. James activated the town's new defensive measures. Fire sprinklers erupted along Main Street, reducing visibility. Steel shutters dropped over shop fronts, eliminating cover points. The Ghost's team found themselves in a killing field of James's design. Watch the flanks, he warned. They'll try to... An explosion rocked the pharmacy next door. James cursed. They'd managed to plant at least one charge. Martinez, status. Holding the north exit. 2 hostiles down, non-lethal. O'Connor? 3. More trying to circle behind the clinic, taking shots when clean. James engaged 2 operatives attempting to breach his clinic's side entrance. His first shot took out a knee, the second a shoulder. Non-lethal, but incapacitating. Ellen, there, adapting, switching to close-quarter tactics. Acknowledged, moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 activated Pine Grove's final surprise. The town's recently upgraded electrical grid. Targeted electromagnetic pulses disabled the team's communications and night vision equipment. Maya, status on civilian evacuation. Complete. All. Non-combatants clear. Nearest law enforcement 20 minutes out. I'm running interference on their channels. Another explosion, smaller this time. The Ghosts' team was getting desperate, using their remaining demolition charges ineffectively. "James!" Ellen's voice. "Movement at your 6!" He spun, catching the operative trying to breach his blind spot. Their fight was brief, brutal. The man was good, Spetsnaz training evident in every move, but James had spent 15 years as Asia's deadliest ghost. The operative went down, unconscious. James secured him efficiently. Team 2, 10 minutes out, Maya updated. "Ghost, different tactical profile, these aren't soldiers." Profile? Wetwork specialists, his personal cleanup crew. James felt his blood run cold. The Ghost wasn't just sending messengers anymore. This was the real attack. Ellen, fall back. To secondary positions. All units, Protocol Sigma. Protocol Sigma was their contingency for professional assassins. The town's layout would funnel them into prepared kill zones. "Negative," Ellen countered. "We hold here. Team 1 is almost contained." As if to punctuate her point, O'Connor's rifle cracked twice. 2 more operatives down, 7 hostiles neutralized, Martinez reported. 3 contained, 2 are still mobile. James watched the remaining Spetsnaz operators realize their position was untenable. Their retreat was professional, coordinated, and completely ineffective against Pine Grove's prepared defenses. Within minutes, the first team was neutralized. No fatalities, multiple injuries, all contained. But James felt no victory. Team 2 was coming, the real hunters, the Ghosts' personal cleaners. "Ellen," he said quietly, "this next wave, they're not here to destroy the town. They're here to destroy you." Her voice was steel. "Through us! You need to pull back, all of you. If you say, 'Handle this alone one more time,' I swear I'll shoot you myself." Ellen's irritation crackled through the comm. "Status check, all units. Martinez here. North exit secured. Reloaded and ready. O'Connor, Overwatch maintained. 4 magazines remaining." James felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Pride. Not in himself, but in them. These people, this town, had become more than just a cover story. "Maya," he called. "Team 2's composition." 8 operators, close-quarter combat specialists, chemical and biological weapons training. A pause. "Ghost, they're carrying nerve agents." The implications hit hard. The Ghost wasn't just planning to kill him. He wanted to make James watch Pine Grove's defenders die slowly, painfully, just like Shanghai. "New parameters," James snapped. "All units mask up. Bioweapon protocols are active." They'd prepared for this too. Ellen's insistence. Force recon. Experience with chemical warfare had saved them again. 5 minutes to contact, Maya warned. "Ghost, satellite shows Team 3 mobilizing." Numbers? 12 operators, heavy weapons. "They're not being subtle anymore." James checked his remaining ammunition. The Ghost was committing everything, burning his entire network for one attack. "James," Ellen's voice was soft. "We knew this was coming. The town's clear. Our people are safe. And what about you, all of you? This isn't your fight. You made it our fight the day you chose to stay, to heal our people, to become part of this town." Her voice hardened. "Pine Grove protects its own." Martinez and O'Connor echoed the sentiment. These weren't just colleagues anymore. They were family. The quiet man had always worked alone because connection was weak. Attachment got people killed. But Dr. Chen had learned differently. Connection was strength, community was armored, and Pine Grove's armor was about to be tested. "Team 2, 3 minutes out," Maya reported. "Multiple vehicles. They're not stopping for reconnaissance." "Good," Ellen said grimly. "Let them come." James moved to his final position, watching his town's defenders do the same. They weren't running, they weren't hiding, they were standing together. The ghost of Shanghai was about to learn a painful lesson. Sometimes the deadliest predators weren't lone wolves. Sometimes they were part of a pack. Team 2 arrived like a thunderstorm. 4 black SUVs, military-grade armor, professional drivers. They didn't slow down, just crashed through Pine Grove's barricades at full speed. Chemical teams. Deploying, Maya warned. Northeast and southwest corners. They're trying to box you in. James tracked the first team through his scope. Their gear was cutting edge, sealed environment suits, specialized delivery systems for nerve agents. The ghost had spared no expense. Martinez status, north exit holding. They're probing the mining tunnel entrances. O'Connor, 2 teams moving through the park. Military formation. These aren't street thugs. Ellen's voice cut in. James, movement on your 3. They're setting up a dispersal unit. The nerve agent delivery system would blanket a 3-block radius, enough to kill everyone inside the perimeter, painfully, slowly, just like the ghost wanted. Not happening, James breathed and took the shot. The dispersal unit exploded harmlessly, its contents neutralized by the specialized rounds Maya had provided. The operators scattered, but their movement was different now. More purposeful. They're hurting us, Ellen realized, using the gas teams as distraction while the assault teams. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The real attack had begun. 10 hostiles, Main Street, O'Connor reported. Another team flanking through the alley. Martinez, fall back to position Charlie, Ellen ordered. They're trying to split our defense. James engaged 3 operators attempting to breach the clinic. These men moved differently than the Spetsnaz team. No wasted motion, every action calculated. Wetwork specialists, just as Maya had warned. The fight was brutal, close quarters. James took a knife slash to his arm, but put 2 operators down. The 3rd retreated, but his movement was wrong. Too obvious. It's a trap, James realized. Ellen, the explosion took out half of Main Street. Ellen! James's voice cracked. Report! Silence. O'Connor, visual on the sheriff. Negative, too much smoke. James's blood ran cold. This was Shanghai all over again. Watching people die because they'd helped him. Then Ellen's voice, strained but alive. Position compromised. Falling back to the church. Relief flooded him, followed immediately by tactical assessment. The church gave them elevation, multiple exit routes, good defensive position. Martinez, cover her retreat. O'Connor, keep their gas team suppressed. Ghost. Maya's tone had changed. Satellite shows Team 3 deploying early. They're not waiting. Numbers? 12 operators. Heavy weapons. Armor support. Armor, they'd brought tanks to a small town fight. Time to contact? 7 minutes. Ghost. There's something else. Their command vehicle? It's his signature. James felt the world slow down. The ghost of Shanghai wasn't just sending teams anymore. He was coming himself. All units, James commanded, fall back to final positions. Activate Omega Protocol. Omega Protocol was their last resort. The town's infrastructure had been rigged to become one massive trap, but using it would destroy everything they'd tried to protect. James. Ellen's voice was soft. If we trigger Omega, Pine Grove is already gone. He watched another building explode. They're going to level it anyway. At least this way, we choose how. A new voice crackled through their comms. Impossible. They were on secured channels. Hello, old friend. James's blood froze. That voice, Shanghai, the hospital, everything is burning. Ghost, the voice continued. Or should I say, Dr. Chen, such a peaceful life you've built. All these people who trust you depends on you. Ellen, change frequencies. Don't bother. The voice was amused. Your encryption is good. Maya's work, I assume. But I had 5 years to prepare for this moment. Through his scope, James caught movement. A figure stepping out of an armored vehicle. Even at this distance, he recognized the stance. The way he moved. The ghost of Shanghai had arrived. I'm going to give you a choice, the voice continued. Just like you gave me in Shanghai. Save these people you've grown to care about. or complete your mission. Stop me, once and for all." James's finger tightened on the trigger. One shot, he could end it all, but the ghost wasn't alone. More figures emerged. Hostages, civilians who hadn't made it to the evacuation points in time. Your move, old friend, their lives or your revenge. Tick-tock, Shanghai all over again, lives in the balance, mission of mercy, but this time was different. This time, he wasn't alone. "Ellen," James said quietly, "you trust me?" "Always." He smiled. The ghost had forgotten something crucial about Pine Grove. Here, the quiet man wasn't just a ghost anymore. Here, he was part of something bigger. "Maya," he commanded, "execute Protocol Phoenix." The night erupted into carefully orchestrated chaos. The ghost of Shanghai had come to burn Pine Grove to the ground. He was about to learn why some fires forge things stronger. Protocol Phoenix activated like a living thing. The town's infrastructure, carefully modified over the past week, came alive with deadly purpose. The ghosts' teams found their communications jammed, their night vision equipment useless. The armored vehicles' electronics failed systematically, leaving them stranded, but that was just the beginning. "All units," James commanded, "execute Phase 1. Ellen's voice, strong and clear. "Copy that. Fire in the hole." The carefully planted charges, not the ghosts' crude demolitions, but precision ordnance, detonated in sequence, not to destroy, but to channel. To her. The ghosts' teams found themselves pushed into prepared kill zones, their superior numbers meaning nothing in the confined spaces. "You've improved," the ghost's voice crackled through their compromised comms. "The old you would have taken the shot. My hostages for your mission." "The old me worked alone," James replied, engaging 3 operators trying to flank Ellen's position. 2 went down, the 3rd retreated with a shoulder wound. "Alone is safer," the ghost taunted. "No attachments, no weaknesses. Look what caring has brought you. A town in flames." Martinez's voice cut in. "North sector cleared, moving to support the sheriff." "O'Connor here. 2 hostile teams pinned down in the park. No civilian casualties." The ghost's laughter echoed through the comms. "Your little team is impressive. Former Force Recon, if I'm not mistaken. But they can't save everyone." One of his operators raised a weapon toward the hostages. James's shot took the man's hand off at the wrist. "Neither can you," James replied coldly. "That's what you never understood. In Shanghai, here, everywhere." "I understood perfectly." The ghost's voice hardened. "You chose weakness, sentiment. Now you'll watch it all burn. Just like I did." "No," Ellen cut in. "You're the one who doesn't understand." The ghost's remaining teams found themselves under attack from multiple directions. Not just James and his defenders, but townspeople. The evacuees had circled back, armed and organized. "Maya's," voice proud, "satellite confirms. Civilian militia units engaging from prepared positions. The mining tunnels worked perfectly." The ghost watched his careful plan unravel. His professional killers, his nerve agents, his armor, all negated by a small town's determination to protect its own. "What have you done?" he demanded. "I learned," James replied, moving to his final position. "From Shanghai, from here. The mission isn't everything. Sometimes the only way to win is to care enough to lose." "Sentiment," the ghost spat. "Weakness." "No," Ellen countered, and James could hear the smile in her voice. "Family." The ghost's teams were in full retreat now, their superior training meaningless against an entire town fighting for its home. The hostages, freed in the chaos, were being evacuated through pre-planned routes. "It's over," James said quietly. "Your teams are down or running. Your plan failed, just like Shanghai. Nothing is over." The ghost's voice turned deadly. "I planned. For failure, for sentiment, for your weakness." New signals appeared on their tactical displays, more teams approaching fast. "Did you think these were all my assets?" The ghost laughed. I spent 5 years preparing for this moment. Everything I had, everything I built, all for you, old friend. Maya's voice, urgent. Ghost. Multiple hostile forces converging. Professional. Network teams. They're not trying to take the town anymore. No, the ghost agreed. Now they just kill everyone. Street by street, house by house, until there's nothing left of your precious family. James felt cold certainty settle in his chest. The ghost had never planned to win conventionally. This was Shanghai again, a choice between mission and mercy, but this time the choice was different. Ellen, he said softly, remember the contingency we discussed? The one you said was too risky? A pause. Then, the bunker gambit? James, no. The odds of surviving are better than the odds of the town surviving his next wave. James checked his remaining ammunition. Maya, time to contact for reinforcements. 15 minutes at best. Ghost, he's right. The town won't survive that long against these numbers. The ghost's laughter filled their comms. Finally seeing clearly, old friend. How many will die for your choice this time? None, James replied. Because I'm not choosing alone anymore. Ellen's voice, understanding flooding in. All units fall back to position 0. Initiate bunker protocol. The ghost's teams would find Pine Grove empty. The civilians already evacuated. The defenders vanished into pre-prepared positions, and in the center of it all, one building rigged to become a killing ground. James's clinic, his home, the place where the quiet man had learned to heal instead of harm. Your move, he told the ghost. Just you and me, like Shanghai, one last time. The ghost's response was immediate. You're assuming I care about surviving. No, James replied. I'm counting on you not caring. If you want to watch me, die up close, personal. Silence. Then, you know me too well, old friend. James moved through his clinic's darkened halls, every step part of a plan, months in the making. Ellen's voice whispered in his ear. James, come back to us. He smiled. I always do. The ghost of Shanghai had come to burn his world down. Instead, he'd walked into a trap 5 years in the making. Sometimes, the deadliest predator was the one who'd learned to care about more than the kill. The final game was about to begin. James moved through, his clinic with predatory grace, every step calculated. The building had been transformed into a killing ground, but not in ways the ghost would expect. Status, he whispered. Teams 1 through 4 entering the perimeter, Maya reported. Ghost is moving to your position, alone. Ellen? All defenders. Secured in the bunker network, civilian evacuation complete. A pause. James, he's bringing something. Heavy case. Chemical payload, James guessed. He wants to make it slow. The clinic's reinforced walls hummed with tension. Every room, every corridor had been modified. Not for defense, for manipulation. He's at the door, Maya warned. James settled into position, not hiding, waiting. The door opened with deliberate slowness. The ghost entered like a shadow-given form, tall, lean, movements precise. The years hadn't changed him much. Same scarred face, same dead eyes. Welcome home, James said. Softly, the ghost smiled. Still sentimental. He set the heavy case down carefully. This town, these people. You never learn. Maybe you're the one who needs to learn. The ghost's laugh was hollow. 5 years I planned this. Watch you play doctor, heal their children, become part of their community. His smile turned cruel. Tell me, did the sheriff know what you were before she fell in love with you? She knows what matters. What matters? The ghost's voice hardened. I had everything, position, respect, power. Then you chose strangers over the mission, made me a failure, a joke. I chose life over death, mercy over mission. Mercy. The ghost spat the word. Was it mercy to let me live with the shame? To watch everything I built crumble because one operative went soft? James watched him closely. The ghost's movements were wrong, too controlled, too precise. Maya, he whispered, scan him. A pause, then multiple devices, some kind of dead man switch. James, he's wired to level the whole block. The ghost's smile widened. Insurance. This time there's no walking away, no clean ending, just blood and fire. Like Shanghai? Exactly like Shanghai. The ghost opened his case slowly. Inside, nested in foam, lay vials of clear liquid. Remember this? The same compound. Slow. Painful. But this time, you get to watch your family die. James felt cold. Certainty settle in his chest. You really think I spent 5 years here without planning for this? The ghost paused. What? Check your case again, carefully. The ghost looked down. His eyes widened fractionally. The vials were empty. Maya, James commanded. Now! The clinic's ventilation system hummed to life. The ghost's expression shifted. From confusion to understanding to rage. When did you... The moment you entered. James smiled grimly. You're not the only one who plans ahead. The ghost tried to move, but his legs buckled. The compound, his own weapon, was already taking effect. Insurance goes both ways, James said quietly. I learned that in Shanghai. Kill me then, the ghost snarled. Finish what you started. No. James stepped closer. That's what you never understood. Sometimes living with our choices is the harder path. The ghost's hand moved to his detonator, but his fingers wouldn't respond. The paralytic agent was fast-acting, designed to his own specifications. Ellen, James called. We're clear. Begin containment. Teams moved in with practiced efficiency. The ghost's deadman switch was disarmed. His forces, leaderless and outmaneuvered, were being rounded up by Pine Grove's defenders. This changes nothing, the ghost gasped as the paralysis spread. They'll never trust you again. Once they know what you are, you're wrong. Ellen's voice approaching down the hall. We've always known what he is. She entered with her tactical team, every movement professional, force recon training evident in her stance. He's a healer, she continued, a protector, someone who chose mercy over vengeance, life over death. Her eyes met James's. That's why we chose him back. The ghost stared at them, understanding finally dawning. You planned this, all of it. 5 years, James agreed. Building something real, something worth protecting. Maya, Ellen called. Status, hostiles contained. Civilian casualties 0. Property damage. Significant but repairable. The ghost's laugh was bitter. You'll never rebuild. Watch us, Ellen replied, as containment teams secured the scene. James knelt beside his old enemy. The paralysis will wear off in 24 hours, long enough for transport to a very secure facility. Where people like us disappear? No. Where people like you get help. James stood. Some ghosts need to learn how to live again. The ghost's eyes held him. Shanghai wasn't the end. No, James agreed. It was the beginning, just not the one you thought. As medical teams moved in, James stepped back, letting his old life recede. Ellen's hand found his, warm and real. Welcome, home, doctor, she said softly. Around them, Pine Grove was already beginning to rebuild. The ghost's forces captured or fled, the town's defenders emerging from their bunkers. Victory felt different this time. Not the cold satisfaction of a mission completed, but the warm certainty of a family protected. The quiet man had worked alone, haunted by choices. Dr. James Chen had found something better. He'd found his way home. The aftermath unfolded like a carefully orchestrated dance. Maya's containment teams, professionals she'd had waiting nearby, secured the ghost's forces. Local law enforcement, briefed by Ellen, established a perimeter. The official story was taking shape. A failed terrorist attack, thwarted by Pine. Grove's prepared defenders. Final numbers, Maya reported through their comms. 27 hostiles in custody. 14 requiring medical attention. No fatalities. James watched the Ghost being loaded into a secure transport. The paralytic agent would keep him contained, but that wasn't what held him now. For the first time, his eyes showed something besides hatred, confusion. "You could have killed them all," the Ghost said quietly. "My team, me, clean, efficient, like Shanghai should have been. That's not who I am anymore." James checked the Ghost's restraints personally. Maybe never was. The quiet man. Asia's deadliest ghost. The Ghost's laugh was hollow. "Now you stitch up children's knees and stop terrorists from destroying small towns." Ellen approached, still in tactical gear. "People can be more than one thing." The Ghost studied her. "Force recon, Afghanistan." His eyes narrowed. "You knew what he was from the start." "I recognized a warrior trying to heal." Ellen's hand found James's, "just like I was." Around them, Pine Grove was coming back to life. The evacuated civilians are returning, emergency teams assessing damage, neighbors helping neighbors. "Your teams will be detained humanely," James told the Ghost. "Given choices, like the one you never gave me. Mercy." The Ghost spat the word. "Still your weakness." "No," Ellen corrected. "His strength, our strength." Maya approached, tablet in hand. "Transport's ready. Secure facility in Nevada is prepped. Full containment, but with rehabilitation. Protocols." The Ghost's eyes widened fractionally. "Rehabilitation. Some ghosts need to learn how to live again," James repeated. "I did." As the transport doors closed, the Ghost's last words hung in the air. Shanghai wasn't just about the mission. It was about what we were, what we had to be. "I know," James replied. "That's why you needed to be stopped. We're more than our missions." The transport disappeared into the night, carrying Asia's most feared ghost to a place where he might learn to be human again. Ellen squeezed James's hand. "Town meeting. In 10 minutes, people will have questions. Think they're ready for the truth. They just fought beside you, protected their home, their family." She smiled. "Truth's easier to handle when you trust the source." The town hall was packed. Faces James had treated, people whose children he'd healed, neighbors he'd grown to care about, all waiting to understand. "5 years ago," he began, "I made a choice. Between completing a mission and saving lives, I chose life, mercy, and that choice led me here." He told them everything: the quiet man, Shanghai, the Ghost, how a deadly operative had learned to heal. When he finished, the silence was deafening. Then Tommy Parker's mother stood up. "Last month you stayed late to stitch up my boy's knee, told him stories to keep him calm. That's who you are to us." Others joined in. Stories of healing, of care, of the community. "The Ghost thought attachments made us weak," Ellen addressed the crowd. "But look what we did tonight, together as a family." James felt something settle in his chest. The quiet man had lived in shadows, avoiding connections. Dr. Chen had built something stronger, a community, a home. "We start rebuilding tomorrow," he told them, "all of us." The meeting ended with plans, assignments, and determination to restore their town, not just buildings, but trust, faith, family. Later, in his partially damaged clinic, James sorted through the wreckage, medical supplies to salvage, equipment to replace. "Maya says the Ghost's network is being dismantled," Ellen reported, helping him organize. "His other targets are safe, protected. And Pine Grove will rebuild, better than before." She caught his hand. Together. James looked around his clinic, the place where he'd learned to heal instead of harm. where the quiet man had become something more. Shanghai was about choices, he said quietly, between mission and mercy, duty and humanity. And tonight was about family. He squeezed her hand. About finding home. The ghost had tried to burn his world down. Instead, he'd forged it stronger. Sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought with weapons, but with choices. And sometimes the greatest victories came not from destroying enemies, but from building something worth protecting. Pine Grove would rebuild, and its doctor, its protector, would be there every step of the way. The quiet man had worked alone, but James Chen was finally, truly home. The victory was short-lived. 3 days after the ghost's capture, Maya's urgent message shattered their peace. Ghost's transport never reached Nevada. Containment team found dead. He's in the wind. James studied the surveillance footage from Maya's secured channel. The ghost's escape had been clinical, precise. The paralytic agent should have kept him contained for 24 hours. Should have. He built immunity, James realized, watching the ghost methodically eliminate his guards. 5 years of preparation. He knew I'd use his own weapon against him. Ellen leaned against his clinic's newly repaired wall, tactical mind working. This was his real plan. Let us think we'd win. Maya, status on his network, dismantled ground teams, frozen assets, but... She paused. Secondary accounts activating. Sleeper cells we missed. He had backups for his backups. The ghost's final words took on new meaning. Shanghai wasn't just about the mission. He wanted us to catch him, James said quietly. Needed us to think. It was over. Ellen's phone buzzed. The image froze her blood. Tommy Parker and his mother shopping 2 towns over. The timestamp was 10 minutes ago. The message was simple. Remember Shanghai? Maya. Already moving teams. But James, there's more. More photos flooded their secure channels. Pine Grove's evacuated civilians, returning home. The construction crews are rebuilding Main Street. Every defender who'd helped protect the town, all under surveillance, all vulnerable. He's not just coming for me this time, James realized. He's coming for everyone. Ellen was already mobilizing. Martinez, O'Connor, full evacuation protocols, now. But the ghost had planned for that too. Roads out of Pine Grove began reporting. Accidents, mysterious vehicle failures. Communication networks crashed systematically. They were trapped. Body count in Shanghai was 127. The ghost's voice crackled through their compromised comms. Let's see if we can beat that record. James felt the familiar cold settling in his chest. The quiet man stirring. But this time was different. This time the ghost wasn't just threatening a mission. He was threatening his family. Maya, that contingency we discussed, the one you said was too dangerous. Silence. Then, the nuclear option. James, there's no coming back from that. If it saves. It won't, Ellen cut in. He's planned for everything else. You think he hasn't planned for that? She was right. The ghost had spent 5 years orchestrating this moment. Every countermeasure, every contingency would be anticipated. More photos arrived. The Parkers enter a coffee shop, the timestamp updating. In real time, tick-tock, the ghost taunted. How many will die for your mercy this time? James studied the coffee shop photo. Something was wrong. The angle, the lighting. Maya, enhance grid coordinates, Charlie 7. The image zoomed. There, reflected in the shop window, a familiar face. He's not using proxies, James breathed. He's there, in person. Ellen saw it too. 2 towns over, 20 minutes away. Close enough to watch, James agreed. He needs to see it happen, like Shanghai. The ghost's laugh filled their comms. Very good, but knowing doesn't help them. Knowing didn't help Shanghai. James felt the pieces clicking together. The ghost's obsession with Shanghai, the need to Make it personal. You're right, he said quietly. Shanghai changed everything when I chose mercy over mission, life over death, weakness over strength. No. James's voice hardened. Humanity over programming. That's what really broke you, isn't it? Not the failed mission, not ashamed silence. I proved we had a choice, James continued, that we weren't just weapons, that mercy wasn't weakness. Mercy gets people killed. Mercy saved my soul. James nodded to Ellen and led me home. The ghost's response was cold. Then watch your home burn. New images flooded their screens. Snipers moving into position around Pine Grove. Chemical weapons teams preparing dispersal units. But James was smiling. Maya, he commanded, execute Protocol Lazarus. The ghost's laugh cut off abruptly. Around Pine Grove, carefully hidden systems activated. Not defensive measures, offensive ones. 5 years of preparation weren't just about protecting the town, they were about protecting his family. You're not the only one who can plan ahead, James told the empty air. The coffee shop is surrounded, has been since you arrived. Those snipers you positioned are about to have a very bad day. Ellen's teams were already moving, not evacuating, attacking. The quiet man had been a ghost. But James Chen was something far more dangerous. He was a man protecting his home. The real battle for Pine Grove was about to begin, and this time, mercy wasn't on the menu. The ghost's surveillance network went dark section by section. Maya's countermeasures, hidden in Pine Grove's infrastructure for 5 years, activated with surgical precision. Target location confirmed, Ellen reported. Coffee shop perimeter secured. Martinez and O'Connor in position. The ghost's voice crackled through their dying network. Did you think I'd come alone? Explosions rocked the coffee shop district, not aimed at the Parkers, but at the buildings around them, creating chaos, panic. Secondary teams deploying. Maya warned, they're not just there for the Parkers. Multiple civilian targets identified. James watched through secured feeds as the ghost's real plan unfolded. The coffee shop was just ground zero. His teams were spreading out, taking hostages systematically. 47 civilians currently under threat, Maya updated. Ghost's teams are using them as human shields. Classic Shanghai tactics. The ghost's laugh was cold. Choose, old friend, the mission or the mercy. But this time, you can't have both. James felt the weight of lives in the balance, just like Shanghai. But this time, the ghost had evolved, learned. Ellen, status on civilian defense teams? In position, but... She hesitated. James, they're outmatched. These aren't local thugs. These are professional network teams. The ghost's voice oozed satisfaction. Did you think you were the only one building something these past 5 years? My networks, my soldiers, all for this moment. More explosions, more hostages. The ghost's teams moved like a virus through the civilian population. Body counts rising, he taunted. Tick-tock. James studied the tactical displays. The ghost had learned from their last encounter. No central position to assault, no single target to eliminate, just innocent lives, scattered, vulnerable. Maya, activate the Lazarus subroutines, all of them. James, Maya's voice was careful. That level of response, there's no coming back, no covering it up. I know. Ellen touched his arm. The town will never be the same. It already isn't. The ghost's teams had taken control of key positions. Professional, efficient. Every hostage is carefully chosen for maximum psychological impact. Your move, old friend, the ghost called. The mission or the mercy, time to choose. But James was smiling, a cold expression that belonged to the quiet man. That's where you're wrong, he said softly. I already chose, 5 years ago. Mercy? The ghost spat. Weakness? No. James's voice hardened. Family. Protocol Lazarus wasn't just a defensive system. It wasn't just about protecting Pine Grove. It was about teaching an old ghost new tricks. Maya, execute final override. Authorization. Shanghai Gambit. The town's infrastructure came alive. Not with weapons or defenses, with truth. Every screen, every phone, every device in a 2-mile radius activated simultaneously, displaying one thing: the ghost's real identity, his network, his crimes, but more importantly, his weakness. "You forgot something," James told him, "about Shanghai, about mercy." The ghost's teams suddenly found themselves facing not just Pine Grove's defenders, but their own psychological ghosts. "I spent 5 years as a doctor," James continued, "learning how people break, how they heal. While you spent 5 years feeding your hatred, I was learning how to weaponize mercy." The ghost's carefully constructed network began to fracture. His professional killers faced their own buried traumas, expertly triggered by James's psychological warfare. "What have you done?" The ghost's voice cracked. "Gave them a choice. The same one you never gave yourself. Around the coffee shop, around Pine Grove, the ghost soldiers began to lower their weapons. One by one, team by team, not beaten by force, but by understanding. "This is what you never learned," James said quietly. "Mercy isn't weakness. It's the hardest strength there is." The ghost's response was a scream of rage. His personal team moved to execute their hostages. But James had planned for that too. Martinez's snipers took them down with non-lethal precision. O'Connor's teams extracted the civilians with practiced efficiency. And Ellen walked straight into the coffee shop, where the ghost of Shanghai sat alone, defeated not by violence, but by the one thing he'd never understood, the power of choice. "It's over," she told him. "For real this time." The ghost stared at his shattered network, his broken plan, everything he'd built for 5 years, undone. "Not by force, but by mercy." "Why?" he whispered. "Why didn't you just kill us?" "Because that's what you would have done," James replied, entering behind Ellen. "And we're not you." The ghost of Shanghai, Asia's deadliest assassin, looked up at the man who'd chosen healing over killing. And for the first time, he began to understand. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from destroying your enemies, but from showing them a better way. The crisis wasn't over. Pine Grove's scars would run deep, but they'd face them together, as a family. The aftermath of Protocol Lazarus hit James harder than any physical wound. His clinic, once a sanctuary of healing, had become a processing center for the ghost's broken network. Professional killers, now shattered by their own demons, needed treatment. He moved between patients mechanically, muscle memory taking over. Physical wounds were easy. The psychological damage, that was harder. "Progress report," Ellen said softly, finding him in his office after midnight. 17 operators in treatment, 8 more incoming. James studied their files without really seeing them. Most showing signs of severe PTSD, buried trauma, things the ghost used to control them. And the ghost himself, James's hands stilled on the medical reports. Catatonic, Protocol Lazarus. It didn't just break his network, it broke him. The weight of it settled in his chest. He'd weaponized healing, used his knowledge of trauma, of human psychology, to shatter minds instead of mending them. "Stop." Ellen's voice was firm. "I know that look. You did what had to be done." "Did I?" James stood abruptly, pacing. "I spent 5 years learning to heal, to help. Then I took that knowledge and used it to break people. To save people," Ellen corrected. "Those operators, they were victims too. The ghost's puppets." But James wasn't listening. The quiet man and Dr. Chen were at war inside him, one proud of the efficient takedown, the other horrified by the method. "I gave them a choice," he said quietly. "That's what I kept telling myself. But did I really? Or did I just find a more elegant way to destroy them?" Maya's voice crackled through their secure line. Incoming situation report. Ghosts secondary networks activating. Sleeper cells we missed. James felt his blood run cold. Numbers? 3 teams different profile than the others. These aren't soldiers or assassins. Then what? Doctors, Maya cut in. Psychiatrists, specialists in psychological warfare. The Ghost's final contingency, not an attack, a counter to Protocol Lazarus. He planned for this, James realized. Even his own breakdown was part of the plan. Ellen was already moving. Martinez, full lockdown. No one in or out of the treatment center. But it was too late. The Ghost's eyes snapped open, clarity replacing catatonia. His laugh was hollow. Did you think you were the only one who learned new tricks, old friend? His remaining operators, the ones James thought broken, moved with synchronized precision, not attacking. Something worse. They began talking. Each word is precisely chosen. Each phrase engineered to maximum psychological impact. Targeting not just James, but every defender who'd helped him. The Ghost smiled. You weaponize mercy. I weaponize the truth. James watched in horror as Pine Grove's defenders began to fracture. The Ghost's psychological operators peel back. Layers of carefully maintained control. Ellen's force recon trauma. Martinez's buried guilt. O'Connor's hidden fears. All exposed. All turned against them. This is Shanghai, the Ghost whispered. The real lesson. Sometimes mercy is crueler than death. James felt it too, the carefully constructed walls between his 2 lives crumbling. The quiet man's kills, Dr. Chen's helplessness, every life he couldn't save, every death he'd caused. Stop, he gasped, but the Ghost's smile only widened. You broke my body in Shanghai, my reputation, my power. His voice turned gentle, almost kind. Now I break your soul. The psychological assault continued, professional, precise. Everything James had built, trust, family, home, turned into weapons against him. Ellen fought it, her military training providing some defense. But the others. James, she gritted out, this isn't real. It's just words. Words are bullets, the Ghost countered softly. And my aim is very, very good. Pine Grove's defenders were falling. Not to violence, but to truth. Their own minds turned against them. James watched his family crumble and understood. Finally what the Ghost had spent 5 years preparing for, not a physical battle, not revenge, but something far crueler, the destruction of hope itself. The dark night of the soul had begun, and this time there might not be dawn. The Ghost's psychological warfare cut deeper than any physical attack. Each word was a surgical strike, targeting the fragile bonds between James's 2 lives. Tell them, the Ghost commanded softly. Tell your family about Belgrade, about the children's hospital. James felt the memories surface, a mission gone wrong, collateral damage he'd tried to forget. Or perhaps Manila. The Ghost's voice was gentle poison. The ambassador's daughter. She trusted you, didn't she? Right until the end. Ellen fought against her own demons, triggered by precise psychological triggers. James, don't listen. But listening is what he does now, isn't it? The Ghost smiled. The gentle doctor, the trusted healer. Tell them how many you healed in Shanghai, how many you saved. The number burned in James's mind. 27 saved. 127 dead. You see, the Ghost continued, mercy has a price. Every life you save. How many die in their place? How many ghosts haunt your dreams, old friend? Pine Grove's defenders were breaking, not just from their own trauma, but from the truth about the man they'd trusted. Martinez's voice shaken, the children's wing in Belgrade. Was necessary, James whispered. But the words felt hollow. Was it? The Ghost's psychiatric team pressed deeper, each word calculated. Or was it convenient? The quiet man never left witnesses, not even small ones. The room spun. James felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. Dr. Chen's compassion warring with the quiet man's efficiency. 5 years, the ghost mused, building trust, creating a family. Tell me, how many patients did you treat while knowing you had their blood on your hands? Ellen struggled to reach him, fighting her own psychological chains. James, this isn't... But it is, the ghost corrected gently. Both sides, the healer and the killer, the savior and the destroyer. His smile turned cruel, just like Shanghai. The memories flooded back. The hospital, the choices, the consequences. You thought Protocol Lazarus was mercy, the ghost continued, using psychology to break my network. But that's not mercy, is it? That's just finding a cleaner way to destroy people. He was right. James had weaponized healing itself, turned his understanding of trauma into a tool for breaking minds. Tell them about the others, the ghost pressed. The ones who helped you in Shanghai, the ones I killed while you played doctor in this quaint little town. The faces of the dead haunted him. Maria Santos, David Park, John Chen, all dead because they'd helped him choose mercy. Stop, James gasped, but the ghost's smile only widened. You want me to stop the truth? Like you stopped it in Shanghai, in Belgrade, in Manila? Each word was a precision strike. How many deaths are you responsible for, healer? The number crushed him. Hundreds. Thousands, maybe, if you counted the ripple effects. Every life he'd taken, every mission he'd completed, had consequences. And now... The ghost's voice turned almost kind. Now you break minds instead of bodies, turn healing into a weapon. Tell me, doctor, how does it feel to corrupt everything you touch? James felt himself fracturing. The quiet man's efficiency, warring with Dr. Chen's oath to do no harm. Ellen's voice seemed distant. James, fight it! But how could he fight the truth? The ghost watched his psychological destruction with professional satisfaction. This is true mercy, he said softly. Showing you what you really are, what you've always been. Pine Grove's defenders, his family, were breaking under the weight of revelation, their trust shattered not by violence but by truth. The darkest moment wasn't the physical defeat, it was the death of hope itself. The ghost of Shanghai had finally won, not through force, but through the cruelest weapon of all. The truth. James Chen, healer, killer, protector, destroyer, felt himself falling into the abyss between his two lives, and this time there might not be a way back to the light. Deep in the psychological abyss, James heard something. A voice cutting through. The darkness. Not Ellen's, not Maya's, Tommy Parker. Dr. Chen fixed my knee when I was scared, the boy was saying. He told me stories about sewing his textbook, made me laugh. The ghost's psychological assault faltered for a moment, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. More voices joined in, Pine Grove residents, patients, people he'd healed. He stayed late to deliver my baby, Sarah Miller's voice. Didn't have to, but he did. Saved my father's life, Michael, Thompson added. Heart attack, middle of the night. Doc was there in minutes. The ghost's team tried to reassert control, but the voices kept coming. Not just memories. Live feeds. The town was broadcasting. Maya's voice, triumphant. You didn't think Protocol Lazarus was just about breaking, did you? James felt something shift in his mind. The abyss between his two lives wasn't a void. It was a bridge. The quiet man saved lives too, Ellen said quietly. In Shanghai, in Belgrade, even in Manila. Her eyes met his. The ambassador's daughter? She survived, because you chose mercy. Even then, the ghost's smile faltered. Lies, manipulation. Truth, Maya cut in. The real truth, not your twisted version. Images flooded the screens. Not just the deaths, the lives saved, the choices made. Belgrade Children's Hospital, Maya continued. 43 children evacuated before the explosion, against orders, the quiet man's work. More images, more truth. Manila, the ambassador's daughter, warned about the assassination attempt, given time to escape. Another mission failure that saved lives. The Ghost's psychiatric team tried to regain control, but their weapons, truth, trauma, guilt, were being turned against them. You see, James said softly, standing straighter, mercy isn't weakness. It's not even just strength. He smiled. It's contagious. The Ghost watched his careful plan unravel. His psychological weapons were rendered useless by something he'd never understood, the power of shared healing. Your network, James continued, the one you spent 5 years building. They weren't just following orders. They were looking for what I found, a way to bridge the darkness. Ellen moved to his side, force recon training supplemented by something stronger, understanding. You tried to break us with the truth, she said. But truth isn't just about the darkness. It's about the light, too. The Ghost's remaining operators began to lower their weapons. Not broken, transformed. Tell them, the Ghost snarled. Tell them about the bodies, the kills, the perfect record of the quiet man. I have, James replied simply. Every death, every choice, every consequence. He looked around at his family, not just Ellen and the defenders, but the whole town. That's what you never understood about mercy. It's not about being perfect. It's about being whole. The Ghost's last weapon, guilt, shattered against something. Stronger, acceptance. 5 years, James continued, I built something real, not a cover, not a lie, but a bridge between who I was and who I could be. The Ghost's psychiatric team stood down, their own trauma protocols turned back on themselves, not to break, but to heal. You want the real truth about Shanghai? James asked quietly. It wasn't about the mission, or mercy. He smiled. It was about choice, the same choice I'm offering your people now. The Ghost watched his final plan crumble, not through violence, not through force, but through the very thing he'd tried to use as a weapon, truth. The real revelation wasn't about the darkness in James's past. It was about the light he'd built from it, and as Pine Grove's voices continued to fill the air, stories of healing, of protection, of family, something new began to take shape, a future where ghosts could learn to live again. The dark night was ending, and dawn was finally breaking. The revelation rippled through Pine Grove like a healing wave. The Ghost's psychological warfare had backfired spectacularly, unearthing not just trauma, but triumph. Show him, Ellen commanded. Maya's systems activated, displaying the full scope of what Protocol Lazarus had really been. Not just a weapon, a restoration project. Surveillance footage played on every screen, the quiet man providing intel that saved civilians, mission after mission. Dr. Chen building not just a cover, but a genuine legacy of healing. 5 years of choices, each one bridging the gap between warrior and healer. Belgrade, James said quietly. You remember the children's hospital differently because you only saw the explosion. You never saw the evacuation. The footage showed the truth. 43 children moved to safety through underground tunnels, a failed mission that saved lives. Manila. More footage. The ambassador's daughter lived because someone warned her, someone who was supposed to be a perfect killer. The Ghost watched his carefully constructed narrative crumble. But Shanghai, he tried. The bodies were terrible, James agreed. A cost I'll carry forever. But not the whole story. New images, the hospital evacuation. People were saved because one operative chose differently. You spent 5 years building a network of killers, James continued. I spent 5 years building something else, a network of healers. Pine Grove's defenders stepped forward, each one carrying their own revelation. Martinez spoke first. Force Recon taught us to kill. Dr. Chen taught us to protect. O'Connor added, the Ghost taught fear. James taught courage. Ellen's voice carried weight. You tried to break us with truth. But the real truth, it's not about what we've done, it's about what we choose to do next. The Ghost's remaining operators absorbed this, their own psychological defenses transformed by understanding. Your people, James told him gently. He followed you because they thought there was no other way, that the darkness was all they could be. He gestured around the room, at Pine Grove's defenders, at his patients, at the family he'd built. But there's always another way, always a choice. The Ghost watched his weapon of truth illuminate something he'd never expected. Hope. His psychiatric team, trained to break minds, found themselves facing a different kind of transformation. Not destruction, reconstruction. This is what mercy really means, James explained. Not weakness, not compromise, but the strength to build something new from the ruins of who we were. Maya's systems displayed the final piece of Protocol Lazarus, not just the defensive measures or the psychological countermeasures, but the healing protocols. 5 years, James said softly, building not just a cover, but a bridge between who we are and who we can become. The Ghost stared at the evidence of a different kind of victory. Not domination through fear, but transformation through understanding. His carefully constructed psychological warfare had revealed something unexpected. The truth could set you free. The real revelation wasn't about the past, the kills, the missions, the choices made. It was about the future, the bridges built, the lives transformed, the family forged. And as Pine Grove's voices continued to rise, stories of healing, of protection, of redemption, a new dawn began to break. Not just for James, Chen or the Quiet Man, but for all the ghosts who needed to learn how to live again. The truth had been weaponized, but mercy had transformed it into something else entirely, a path home. From revelation came resolve. James gathered Pine Grove's defenders in his clinic's basement, now transformed into a command center. The Ghosts. Psychological warfare had failed, but the threat remained. Maya, status on his remaining assets? 2 networks are still active, wetwork teams in Chicago and Seoul, moving to mobilize. Ellen studied the tactical displays. He's calling in everything. No more games. No, James agreed. This time it's just force, old school. The Ghost, secured but still dangerous, watched them plan. His smile held genuine amusement. Do you think revelation changes anything? There are still men with guns coming. Professional killers. We know, Ellen replied. The difference is, now, we're not just defending, we're fighting for something bigger. James outlined their strategy on the holographic display Maya had installed. 3 phases. First, we neutralize the Chicago team before they can deploy. Martinez, that's your operation. Martinez nodded, already checking her gear. The former cartel. Hunter had scores to settle. Second phase, O'Connor's team intercepts Seoul. We have assets in place thanks to Maya's network. And third, Ellen asked, though she already knew, we end this permanently. James pulled up detailed schematics. The Ghost's entire operation. Every safe house, every account, every shadow. The Ghost's laugh was hollow. You'll never find them. All 5 years of building, 5 years of watching, Maya cut in. Every move, every connection. You think James was the only one planning long-term? The displays showed the full scope of their countermeasures, not just tactical responses, but a complete dismantling of the Ghost's world. Martinez, your team deploys in 20 minutes. Full tactical loadout, non-lethal protocols. Copy that. She checked her specialized equipment, designed to incapacitate without killing. Ghost's Chicago crew won't know what hit them. O'Connor's voice crackled through comms. Seoul team is prepped, local assets in position, just waiting for the green light. The Ghost watched his empire being systematically targeted. You're still playing with mercy. My men won't show the same restraint. That's why we'll win, James replied simply. They're fighting from fear. We're fighting from strength. Ellen pulled up more tactical data. Ghost's wet work teams are good, but predictable, standard kill team protocols. We've trained for this. The basement hummed with purposeful energy. Pine Grove's defenders moved with new confidence, the revelation of truth having forged them stronger. Maya, timeline on Chicago team? 6 hours to deployment. They're moving carefully, trying to avoid detection. Too late for that. Martinez smiled, checking her weapon. We're already inside their perimeter. James studied the operational plans. One final time, everything hinged on precise timing, perfect coordination. Ellen, you'll coordinate from here. Keep our people safe, the town secure. And you? His smile was grim. I'm going to Seoul. Some ghosts need to be laid to rest personally. The ghost's eyes narrowed. Finally, no more mercy. No, James corrected. Complete mercy. Your people deserve a chance at the same choice I made, the same bridge I built. The momentum was building. Years of planning, months of preparation, all coming to this moment. Pine Grove had evolved from a sanctuary to a staging ground. Its defenders are no longer just protectors, but liberators. One last thing, James addressed his team. Remember what we learned today. Truth isn't a weapon, it's a foundation. Ellen squeezed his hand. Come, back to us, always. The ghost watched his carefully constructed world begin to crumble, and finally understood. The real power wasn't in breaking things, it was in building something worth fighting for. The final game was about to begin. And this time, mercy wasn't. Just a choice. That was the whole point. The operation launched with precision timing. Martinez's team moved through Chicago's shadows like ghosts themselves, each member carrying specialized non-lethal equipment Maya had designed. Target location confirmed. Her voice whispered through secure comms. 8 operators, heavy weapons. They're preparing for deployment. James, already airborne to Seoul, checked the tactical feeds. Profile? Ex-military, Eastern European. Same training as the first wave. Martinez's voice held cold certainty. They won't expect mercy. The Ghost's Chicago team had set up in an abandoned warehouse district. Professional, traditional, predictable. Maya, status on their communications. Isolated. They're running dark until deployment. Makes them harder to track. And easier to surround, Ellen finished. Martinez, you have a green light. Protocol Echo is in effect. Protocol Echo was something new. Not just non-lethal takedowns, but targeted psychological operations. Using the Ghost's own tactics against his people, the warehouse district erupted in carefully orchestrated chaos. Not explosions or gunfire, but truth. Every screen, every device within range, activated simultaneously, displaying one simple message. There's another way. The Ghost's operators found themselves facing not just Pine Grove's defenders, but their own choices, their own potential for redemption. First team breaching the north entrance, Martinez reported. No resistance. They're watching the feeds. James smiled. The Ghost had spent years building killers, but even killers could learn to choose differently. O'Connor, status in Seoul, local assets in position, target facility identified. 12 operators, heavy security. A pause. James, they're different. These aren't just soldiers. What do you mean? Their movements, their protocol. They're like you, former ghosts. The Ghost's laugh crackled through their compromised comms. You think you're the only one who can recruit shadows? Seoul is where I keep my real weapons, the ones who never learned mercy. James felt cold certainty settle in his chest. The Ghost's elite team, operators who'd never broken, never questioned, never chose differently. Maya, adjust the flight plan, get me to Seoul faster. Already done. But James... Her voice was careful. These aren't men you can save. They're not looking for redemption. Everyone's looking for redemption, he replied softly. Some just don't know it yet. In Chicago, Martinez's operation was succeeding beyond expectations. The Ghost's operators, faced with proof of another path, were laying down arms voluntarily. 7 of 8 secured, she reported. No casualties. They're asking questions. Let them, James commanded. Truth isn't just a weapon anymore, it's a cure. Ellen's voice cut in. James, the Soul Team is moving. They're not waiting for orders. The tactical displays showed the Ghost's elite operators mobilizing. Their movements were perfect, lethal. No hesitation, no mercy, just like he used to be. This is what you never understood, the Ghost taunted. Some ghosts can't be saved. Some shadows don't want light. But James was smiling. That's where you're wrong. One last time. His plane was approaching Seoul, but the real operation was already in motion. Not just there, but everywhere. Every safe house, every account, every shadow, all exposed not to violence, but to possibility. The momentum wasn't just tactical anymore, it was transformational. And as Pine Grove's defenders moved into their final positions, as the Ghost's empire crumbled piece by piece, a new truth emerged. Sometimes the greatest victory wasn't in defeating your enemies, but in showing them they didn't have to be enemies at all. The final phase was beginning, and this time, mercy wasn't just a tactical choice. It was the whole war. Seoul's neon-lit streets blurred beneath James's tactical insertion. The Ghost's elite facility, a seemingly abandoned office complex, loomed ahead. 12 operators confirmed, Maya updated. All former Ghosts, all with records like yours. Before or after Shanghai? James checked his specialized equipment. Before. These are the ones who never broke, never questioned. Perfect killers, just like he used to be. The facility's security was multi-layered, professional, but James hadn't spent 5 years just playing doctor. Every system had a weakness. O'Connor, status, local assets in position, but James, a pause. They're not responding to protocol echo. Psychological warfare isn't working. Because they've already made their choice, the Ghost's voice taunted. Not everyone wants redemption, old friend. James moved through shadows, muscle memory taking. Over. The quiet man's skills merged with Dr. Chen's understanding. The first Ghost never saw him coming. Non-lethal takedown, precise and efficient. But this one was different. The operator smiled through blood-stained teeth. We've been waiting. He said you'd come. More shadows detached from darkness. Perfect killers surrounding their prey. Maya, facility scan. Multiple hostiles. James, they're not trying to stop you. No, he realized. They're herding me. The Ghost's laughter filled their comms. Finally understanding. This was never about stopping you. It was about completing you. The elite team moved with lethal grace, pushing James deeper into the facility, not attacking, guiding. Ellen's status in Chicago? Martinez has secured all targets. They're responding to rehabilitation protocols. Her voice held concern. James, get out of there. This is a trap. I know. He smiled grimly. That's why I'm here. The facility's core held answers, a room filled with screens, each showing a different facet of his life. Pine Grove, his patience. Every life he'd saved, and every life he'd taken. The Ghost's elite team surrounded him but didn't attack. They were waiting, you see? The Ghost's voice was almost gentle. This is what mercy costs. Every life saved creates a debt. In blood. The screens showed the truth. Every mission, every kill, every choice. But something was wrong. Maya analyzed these feeds. Already on it. James, they're altered. Selective truth. The Ghost had manipulated the data. Shown only death, never salvation. James faced the elite Ghosts. He showed you what he wanted you to see. Let me show you something else. Protocol Phoenix activated. Not as a weapon, but as revelation. The true records. Every life is saved. Every choice that led to mercy. The elite killers watched their perfect world crack. You can't save everyone. The ghost snarled. Some souls don't want to be saved. No, James agreed, but everyone deserves the choice. The final confrontation wasn't fought with weapons, it was fought with truth. And as souls' shadows began to lift, as perfect killers faced imperfect choices, the real battle became clear. Not for survival, but for redemption. The ghost's last weapons weren't bullets or bombs. They were mirrors of what James could have become. The climax wasn't about winning, it was about choosing. One last time. The facilities. Screens flickered, showing the full truth now. Not just the kills, but the lives saved. Not just the shadows, but the light. James faced the ghost's elite team, 12 perfect killers who'd never learned mercy. You know what he didn't show you? James activated new feeds. Belgrade, the children's evacuation, Manila, the ambassador's daughter. The operators watched. Their carefully constructed reality crack. Every mission has two paths, James continued. He only showed you one. The screens displayed parallel timelines. The ghost's way, efficient, lethal, perfect. And another path, harder, riskier, but saving lives. Maya, show them Shanghai. The facility's systems came alive with footage the ghost had buried. The hospital evacuation, lives saved against orders. You were there, James addressed the operators. Some of you saw what happened. Recognition flickered in cold eyes. These weren't just perfect killers, they were witnesses. The ghost told you I failed the mission. James moved closer. But what if the mission was wrong? Ellen's voice crackled through comms. James, multiple heat signatures converging. They're coming to see, he finished, to remember. More shadows emerged, not attacking, watching. The ghost's entire network of ghosts drawn to this moment. You can't undo what we are, one operator spoke. His voice held decades of perfect kills. No, James agreed, but we can choose what we become. The facility's screens showed Pine Grove. Now, not just a cover, but a transformation. A killer who learned to heal. He says mercy is weakness, James continued. That saving lives creates debts in blood. He smiled. He's right about the debt. But I was wrong about how to pay for it. The ghost's voice shook with rage. Kill him, finish this. But his perfect killers didn't move. They were too busy watching their own potential futures unfold. 5 years, James told them, building something real, something better than perfect kills and shadow games. The operators saw Pine Grove's defenders, former soldiers, hunters, killers, transformed into protectors. Everyone has red in their ledger, James said quietly. The question isn't how to erase it. It's what you do next. The ghost screamed orders. But his voice held no power now. His perfect killers had seen something stronger than efficiency. They'd seen hope. The climactic confrontation wasn't one with violence. It was one with possibility. And as souls' shadows lifted, as perfect killers faced imperfect choices, a new truth emerged. Sometimes the greatest victory wasn't in defeating your enemies, but in showing them they didn't have to be enemies at all. The real battle wasn't for survival, it was for redemption, and mercy, it turned out, was contagious. The ghost's elite team, 12 perfect killers who'd never broken, faced their first real choice, between shadows and light, between efficiency and humanity, between what they were trained to be and what they could choose to become. The facility's screens showed them. Futures they'd never imagined possible, and one by one, perfect killers began to lower their weapons, not broken, transformed. The final confrontation wasn't about winning or losing, it was about choosing. And as James stood among former ghosts, learning to live again, he understood. Sometimes, the greatest, battles weren't fought with weapons, but with hope. The ghost had tried to use truth as a weapon. Instead, it had become a key, unlocking possibilities even perfect killers couldn't resist. The dawn was breaking in Seoul, and shadows were learning. To face the light, James returned to Pine Grove different from when he left. Not just a doctor who'd been a ghost, or a ghost who'd learned to heal, something new entirely. Final numbers, Maya reported. Ghost's entire network was neutralized, not through force, through choice. The clinic's basement command center displayed the results: Chicago team, fully rehabilitated. Seoul facility, transformed into a recovery center. Global assets, choosing new paths. Ellen studied the reports. They're all requesting training, medical training. Of course they are, James smiled. The best way to balance the ledger. The ghost sat in his secure cell, watching his empire transform, not destroyed, reborn. Do you think this changes anything? His voice held less venom now, more confusion. You think killers can really become healers? I did. James checked his patient files. Tommy Parker was due for a checkup. We all did. Pine Grove was rebuilding, not just from the physical damage, but into something stronger. The town's defenders had evolved. Martinez now ran combat trauma courses. O'Connor trained emergency response teams. Ellen was building something new entirely. A program for operators wanting to change paths. We're calling it Project Phoenix, she told the ghost. Your people will be the first class. The ghost stared at the proposal. A legitimate program, backed by Maya's connections, turning shadows into shields. Why? He asked finally. After everything, because that's what healing means, James replied. Not just fixing bodies, fixing choices. The clinic hummed with new energy. Former operators learning medicine. Perfect killers discovering imperfect mercy. Maya status on global initiatives. Shanghai facility is being converted first. Seems appropriate. Her voice held satisfaction. The hospital where it all began, becoming where it all changes. James treated his patients with renewed purpose. Each bandage, each stitch, each moment of healing was more than medical care now. It was proof that change was possible. The ghost watched his former assets transform through the security feeds. Slowly, reluctantly, something shifted in his eyes. I spent 5 years planning revenge, he said quietly. You spent 5 years planning redemption. For everyone, James agreed. Even you. The new world wasn't perfect. Some shadows refused the light. Some wounds would never fully heal, but Pine Grove had become more than a sanctuary. It had become a beacon. The quiet man had learned to heal. Dr. Chen had learned to fight. And James had learned the hardest lesson, sometimes the greatest. Victory wasn't in defeating your enemies, but in helping them become something more than enemies. The final resolution wasn't an ending. It was the beginning, a new way forward, for ghosts learning to live, for killers learning to heal, for everyone seeking a bridge between who they were and who they could become. Pine Grove's lights shone in the darkness, showing shadows the way home. The war was over, and mercy had won. Not through force, but through choice, the hardest strength of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.